Big question today is Elon Musk the best CEO ever in history? Or maybe some people are thinking he's the worst CEO in history. Let's go through both sides and figure out what we all think. This is being co-streamed in all three of our channels. You can find this on Brian White's channel, Future Awesome. We've got this on Hans Nelson's channel as well on YouTube. So, Brian, why don't you kick us off? Tell me all the things, the stupid things that Elon has been doing for
Well, they had a good deal going with Lotus when they were using the gliders. Why build your own car? It can't be done. It's a crazy idea. They're going to build their own Model S from nothing. Any company that tried that in the past 50, 60 years had failed. Terrible decision. Turns out it actually worked. It was the best thing for them. But just buy the batteries. Why would you want to build your own battery factory? Why would you want to put billions of your own money into creating Giga Nevada? That's a terrible idea. Turns out that is exactly what was needed. And any company that didn't do that, suffered for it. Opening a factory in China. Do you understand how, first of all, you're never going to sell any cars there. They're too expensive. They're going to steal your IP and copy it, which still hasn't really happened. And then your factory will be seized by the government. Also hasn't happened. All of those were just the worst ideas. But looking back, some of us could see them at the time and say, no, these make sense. But a lot of analysts, a lot of very highly paid experts disagreed. So when we see something coming down the pike and we don't understand it, that doesn't mean that it's a mistake. Another one would be not allowing buyouts on the Model 3s in 2018. When those cars came back into inventory, they were worth as much as they were the first time because of an unusual circumstance. So sometimes maybe there's an element of luck. But luck happens more often to those who can see what's coming and prepare accordingly. So yeah, the worst. These are terrible decisions, except everyone has followed. You can add gigacastings to that list. Why would you want, first of all, they have to invent a new gigapress just to make these things, and it's never going to work. Well, it worked, and now, as we can see from all the posts by Luca Greco, they're copying it constantly. Everyone is trying to get into that game because it works. So what do you think, Hans?
Well, what you've been talking about, though, Brian, is all the things that Elon is making decisions on product-wise or business-wise, and you're saying, so crazy, he is able to accomplish crazy. But what about the way he manages people? Do people like the way he is? Do you need your employees to like you? Do they work hard? I have a video here from, I think it's Wall Street Journal, that they interviewed some of the employees who's worked for Elon first. Let's listen into a few things of what they said.
Elon, or you want to have a conversation with Elon and you get that opportunity to talk to Elon, you need to be concise, quick.
There's definitely 2 a.m. texts and 6 a.m. conference calls.
When I used to go into meetings with him, I used to always stop by our barista and I would get a couple espressos and chug that down and then go into the meeting.
He has never said this, but I've watched it. You have 30 seconds to make your point.
Elon Musk is known by his employees to be intense. When he took over Tesla in 2008, he sent the company into crisis mode to jumpstart his vision of how to reinvent the auto industry. Now, he appears to be using a similar management playbook to remake Twitter. We spoke with former Tesla and SpaceX employees to better understand how Musk became known for his cutthroat and tireless management style, and what that may mean for his future employees. Step one for Musk is to rally employees around a lofty company mission. It's exactly what inspired Carl Medlock to join Tesla in 2009.
We were all so excited about the brand. I mean, we're all working 80, 100 hours a week. We kind of lost track of our families, our passions, our hobbies, and all that stuff, but we loved what we were doing. I never once had Elon or saw Elon do a rah-rah meeting like that.
Medlock now runs his own electric vehicle repair shop in Seattle. He said he was terminated from Tesla in 2013 over a misunderstanding with his direct manager. Garrett Reisman was similarly inspired by the mission of SpaceX and joined in 2011.
It's a very demanding environment. But by and large, it's not because of him cracking the whip. Making human life multiplanetary, getting to Mars, having a colony on Mars, is something that motivates pretty much everybody there at SpaceX.
Reisman left SpaceX in 2018 to teach astronautical engineering at the University of Southern California.
I'll pause it there, guys. I mean, People come and then they leave and they work really, really hard. In some ways, Elon does crack the whip. In some ways, he doesn't crack the whip. I mean, we've heard stories about don't ever get in an elevator with Steve Jobs. You'll get fired, right? So is he a terrible boss? Do people hate him? Or do people love working at Tesla? What have you heard, Hans?
Yes, he's a terrible
Yes.
boss. He's also an incredible boss. People love
There you
working
go.
for him. People hate working for him. It really is all over the map. And the thing that people have a hard time holding in their mind is that to accomplish the types of ambitions that Elon has, like he just doesn't have time or capacity to care about some of the things that, most people care about. So being liked is definitely one of those things that Elon really, really cares about creating a self-sustaining colony on Mars. And he cares about accelerating the advent of sustainable transportation here on Earth. And as long as you can contribute to those goals and you're able to, so you've got to be high functioning, you've got to be able to be very quick and operate at a high level of both internal motivation and just output. Like you have to constantly be turning out work. Then you're useful to him and you've got a place at one of his companies. If you are not those things, it doesn't matter how useful you have been in the past. If you are no longer useful to him now, there's a good chance that you're gone. So if you go back and read the biography that Walter Isaacson wrote, one of the stories that really drives that point home is Hans Koenigsmann, who was one of the most critical engineers on the early SpaceX team that helped get the Falcon 1 to orbit and then went on to be a manager there for a long time. And there's a point, I believe it's after the Falcon 9 has successfully made it to orbit and has even been reused, where Hans is just kind of we'll say he doesn't have the same youthful energy anymore that he once had in the company to be able to produce the high level of output that is expected of people, especially in those top ranks. And that's one, like the closer you are to Elon, the more is expected of you for output. And it got to the point where Elon just looked at him. He said, Hans, it's time for you to go. And the fact that, he was so well respected by the team, so much investment, had contributed so positively to the mission for so long, that didn't really factor into, that's like a sunk cost in Elon's mind. It didn't factor into the decision anymore. He was no longer the most productive person in that role that Elon had access to. And so it was time for him to go, and he brought in someone else. And that's just a hard environment to work on for a prolonged period of time. So the fact that like Drew Baglino made it 18 years at Tesla, like that's insane. And we've seen a lot of these departures recently, and I think this is what makes sense of a lot of the recent, whether they're firings or whatever's departures that are voluntary, maybe a combination of both, entire teams being let go, is that for those people that are responsible for critical parts of the mission, if they are not, it could be, if they were doing what they were doing at any other company, it would be like top performers. But in how close they are to Elon, they're not moving fast enough. And so he is very quick to say, you know what, we need to do better here. And I've given opportunities and I'm not seeing the results that I expected. And the fastest way to get from where we are to where we need to go is to just cut it and grow something back completely new. And in doing something completely new, starting with a clean sheet, whether that's from a team standpoint, whether that's from an approach standpoint, whether that's from a technology standpoint, we're going to solve this problem better. And that's what he does. And so, that's my take on like both the good part of working for Elon and the hard part of working for Elon. And for every single person, even who is close to him, like you're going to maybe experience all of those. You're going to come in and experience all of the opportunities to own things and get things done and contribute to a huge mission. And then when you have run out of energy to do that, then it's going to be time for you to go as well. And it's a hard cycle.
No,
I,
that's what I
I would
expect.
agree with that. I would
Mhm.
just say he's a package deal. We've been saying this for a long time. Do you want, you can't say I want the most horsepower and then say, but also I don't want wheels. You got to do the whole thing, and he's got a level of energy that is remarkable. I can't think of other CEOs that have achieved this level of success and felt any need to keep going. It's just who he is, and it is difficult. I'm sure it's difficult to work for him. I'm sure it's stressful, but a lot of people thrive in that kind of environment, and that's what we've seen over and over with Tesla is when these people are let go, it doesn't really affect their ability to recruit new people. And like you were saying, sometimes you just got to say, and we say this every week, Hans, you got to go.
Oh no, don't say that.
I tease. He set it up. It was in the comments. What am I supposed to do?
Okay, so I found the email that Elon sent to the staff. So let's take a look at this. It says here, as described previously, we're conducting a comprehensive organizational restructuring across our whole company. Tesla has grown and evolved rapidly over the past several years, which has resulted in some duplication of roles and some job function. While they made sense in the past, are difficult to justify today. As part of this effort, the need to reduce costs and become profitable, we have made the difficult decision to let go of approximately 9% of our colleagues across the company. These cuts were almost entirely made for our salaried population, and no production associates were included. This will not affect our ability to reach Model 3 production targets in the coming months. Well, that was Elon Musk in 2018. Difficult but necessary Tesla reorg underway. My email to the company has already leaked to the media. Here it is, unfiltered. Sounds like it's happening again. And then Kristen K10, one of the original supporters and Tesla bulls, Elon reorganizing Tesla top to bottom happens. This is nothing new. The media has a heyday with it, but it's just ridiculous when those not working for the company assume they know what's best, freak out, and push FUD. But I got to ask the question, right? What kind of CEO would you rather have? The person who can make the tough decisions, and it's difficult to fire people, or the person who can't? And, we've heard, again, Steve Jobs and others, they seem to be people who are, what is a CEO? Is a CEO here to provide employees a great place to work? Are they here to achieve a goal and a mission? And in order to get that, sometimes you need, like you were saying, Hans, some people are important today, but they may not be important later. Some people have the energy today, but they don't have the energy later. So movement of folks is part and parcel. And then the whole story about how a company is, one thing right now, it's stage one. Now it's headed towards a stage two. It's completely changing, right? We're heading from a company that is a vehicle maker to one that is an automaker. Somebody said this before to me, which I love, a car company to an auto company, autonomous company, and that require very different people. So what do you guys think about that? Like, is he, I don't know. I guess I'm biased. I can't understand when people say that he's the worst CEO out there. How's that even possible when this is a company, a guy who's running multiple companies that are multiple billions that have achieved unbelievable achievements and goals? How is that possibly considered to be a terrible CEO doesn't know how to run his company?
I would say, I would translate it. The people who say that just say that because they hate him. And I understand why people hate him. That's kind of a whole different thing. But they're going to cloak, I hate Elon Musk, and they're going to say he's the worst CEO ever. And I mean, for people who are short-sighted investors who do the very classic thing of buying high and selling low because they buy it when everyone else is excited about it and then they sell it when everyone else is not excited about it, then maybe for them it does feel like he's the worst CEO because they lost money and they attribute their loss of money to Elon because they just don't understand how to invest. And, the likelihood that they understand how to invest better in other companies is also low. I think that those are factors. But one of the things that if you can bring up, I've got a screen share ready, Herbert. This is a clip that I think people should keep in mind when it comes to that fact that you referenced earlier about, do you want a CEO who knows how to be able to make those hard decisions when it's necessary, and more, even going beyond that, to be someone like a Steve Jobs who's able to maintain a level of innovation and creativity even in a large organization. This little clip from Jim Keller is very, very good for that. So
Do you think it was possible for Intel to pivot hard and win the mobile market? That's a hell of a difficult thing to do, right? For a huge company to just pivot. I mean, it's so interesting because we'll talk about your current work. It's like, it's clear that PCs were dominating for several decades, like desktop computers, and then mobile, it's unclear.
It's a leadership question. Like Apple under Steve Jobs when he came back, they pivoted multiple times. They built iPads and iTunes and phones and tablets and great Macs. Like who knew computers should be made out of aluminum? Nobody knew that. But they're great. It's super fun.
That was Steve?
Yeah, Steve Jobs. Like they pivoted multiple times. And the old Intel, they did that multiple times. They made DRAMs and processors and processes. And
I gotta ask this: what was it like working with Steve Jobs?
I didn't work with him.
Did you interact with him?
Twice. I said hi to him twice in the cafeteria.
What did he say? Hi.
He said, "Hey, fellas." He was friendly. He was wandering around and with somebody. He couldn't find a table because the cafeteria was packed, and I gave him my table. But I worked for Mike Colbert, who talked to Mike was the unofficial CTO of Apple, and a brilliant guy. And he worked for Steve for 25 years, maybe more. And he talked to Steve multiple times a day. And he was one of the people who could put up with Steve's, let's say, brilliance and intensity. And Steve really liked him. And Steve trusted Mike to translate the shit he thought up into engineering products that worked. And then Mike ran a group called Platform Architecture, and I was in that group. So many times I'd be sitting with Mike and the phone would ring. It'd be Steve, and Mike would hold the phone like this because Steve would be yelling about something or other.
Yeah. And he would translate.
And he'd translate it, and then he would say, "Steve wants us to do this." So,
was Steve a good engineer or no?
I don't know. He was a great idea guy.
Idea person.
And he's a really good selector for talent.
Yeah. So that seems to be one of the key elements of leadership, right?
And then he was a really good first principles guy. Like somebody say something couldn't be done, and he would just think, that's obviously wrong. Right. But, maybe it's hard to do. Maybe it's expensive to do. Maybe we need different people. There's like a whole bunch of, if you want to do something hard, maybe it takes time. Maybe you have to iterate. There's a whole bunch of things you could think about, but saying it can't be done is stupid.
How would you compare? So it seems like Elon Musk is more engineering centric, but is also, I think he considers himself a designer too. He has a design mind. Steve Jobs feels like he's much more idea space, design space versus engineering.
Yeah.
Just make it happen. Like the world should be this way. Just figure it out.
But he used computers. He had computer people talk to him all the time. Like Mike was a really good computer guy. He knew what computers could do.
Computer meaning computer hardware, like low level
hardware,
stuff?
software, all the pieces.
The whole thing.
And then he would, have an idea about what could we do with this next. That was grounded in reality. It wasn't like he was, just finger painting on the wall and wishing somebody would interpret it. So he had this interesting connection because, he wasn't a computer architect or a designer, but he had an intuition from the computers we had to what could happen. And
it's interesting you say intuition because it seems like he was pissing off a lot of engineers in his intuition about what can and can't be done. What is all these stories about like floppy disks and all that kind of stuff?
So in Steve, the first round, like he'd go into a lab and look at what's going on and hate it and fire people or ask somebody in the elevator what they're doing for Apple and not be happy. When he came back, my impression was is he surrounded himself with a relatively small group of people.
Yes.
And didn't really interact outside of that as much. And then the joke was you'd see like somebody moving a prototype through the quad with a black blanket over it. And that was because it was secret, partly from Steve, because they didn't want Steve to see it until it was ready.
Yeah, the dynamic with Johnny Ive and Steve is interesting. It's like you don't want to. He ruins as many ideas as he generates.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a dangerous kind of line to walk.
But if you have a lot of ideas, like Gordon Bell was famous for ideas, right? And it wasn't that the percentage of good ideas was way higher than anybody else. It was he had so many ideas, and he was also good at talking to people about it and getting the filters right, and seeing through stuff. Whereas Elon was like, "Hey, I want to build rockets," so Steve would hire a bunch of rocket guys, and Elon would go read rocket manuals.
So Elon's a better engineer, a sense or more like a love and passion for the manuals.
Yeah, and the details,
the details,
data, and
the craftsmanship too, right? Well, I guess Steve had craftsmanship too, but of a different kind. Yeah. What do you make of just the standard for just a little longer? What do you make of like the anger and the passion and all of that, the firing and the mood swings and the madness, being emotional and all of that? That's Steve, and I guess Elon too. So what is that a bug or a feature?
It's a feature. So there's a graph, which is y-axis productivity.
Yeah.
X-axis at 0 is chaos.
Yeah.
And infinity is complete order.
Yeah.
Right. So as you go from the origin, as you improve order, you improve productivity.
Yeah.
And at some point, productivity peaks, and then it goes back down again.
Yeah.
Too much order, nothing can happen.
Yes. But the question is how close to the chaos is that?
No. Here's the thing: is once you start moving in the direction of order, the force vector to drive you towards order is unstoppable.
Oh, so it's a
slippery and every organization will move to the place where their productivity is stymied by order.
So you need.
So the question is, who's the counterforce? Because it also feels really good as you get more organized, and productivity goes up. The organization feels it; they orient towards it, right? They hired more people. They got more guys who can run process. You get bigger, right? And then inevitably, the organization gets captured by the bureaucracy that manages all the processes.
Yeah.
Right. And then humans really like that. And so if you just walk into a room and say, guys, love what you're doing, but I need you to have less order.
Yeah.
If you don't have some force behind that, nothing will happen.
I can't tell you on how many levels that's profound. So
that's why I say it's a feature. Now.
Okay. Yeah, that is very, very powerful, right? Because if you leave a company alone by itself, it's going to get productivity, but it's going to be very stymied. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing and why we've seen over and over again. This is just like we're talking about. That was a 2018 blurb that you were reading about Elon restructuring the organization. This is why Elon restructures every couple of years, is that these types of processes kind of start to take hold, and it's very natural. You get a lot of benefits from them, but then you need to come back in with the big hammer, as Andre Karpathy said. Like, you need the very smart guy who's very powerful, who has a big hammer, who then comes in and smashes things so that we can get the chaos necessary in order to really stimulate that ability to continue to be creative time after time after time, year after year after year.
And I would say, look, 5% layoffs, that's terrible. 8%, 10% layoffs, that's terrible. You can flip that around and say, they hired so many people and 90% of them were keepers. 90% good hires. That is borderline impossible. Routine trimming of the fat is not that unusual. I'd be very surprised if an employee at Tesla today doesn't know someone who was let go. That's unfortunate, but it's hard to argue that every single employee can be kept. Now, you can argue which ones should be let go. I think it's a little cruel to fire all the subordinates in a chain. But if they are hiring them back, which is the speculation we heard today, hiring back the better people, I think it was more a problem of communication than execution. And boy, did the executioner have a very sharp axe. We've got to,
Well, he thinks
again,
about the organization, I think, the same way that he thinks about a lot of the part. He says, if we delete until you deleted too many things, once you realize, oh, hey, we actually needed that, we need to add some things back, that's when you know that you went far enough. And, I think that he thinks about the organization in the same way, that sometimes you've got to fire. And then you're like, oops, we kind of needed some of those people. Can we have them back, please? And, we've heard about that exact scenario playing out at X. I've heard about it playing out in other places. And, now it seems like that is playing out again here in Tesla.
Let's talk about
yeah.
if we think that Elon is the best CEO ever in history. Is he the best CEO ever in history? Okay. So what would you use to criteria to determine who's the best CEO, right? It would be create game-changing products that accomplished a market. And you might say that if it's the market that's the biggest market in the world, that has more impact. Can they create deals? Can they sign partnerships with countries, with the top dignitaries of all these countries in the world? Who wants to have them come in? Can they create jobs? Can they obviously create something that's going to impact society and humanity? Can they make it happen? Can they attract the best talent? And so these are the lists that I go through, and I think I can't think of another person. I mean, I was a Steve Jobs fan. I believe that Apple was an amazing company, one of the best companies in the world. Now I believe it's Tesla and Elon Musk. I don't agree with a lot of things that Elon says or his politics, but at the end of the day, he is got game-changing, life-changing, society-changing missions, and he's able to attract the best talent. And then I don't know how you can say that, when he comes and signs, shakes the hand of the premier of China, the second guy in charge of China, and they welcome him with open arms. And just like all the other, Prime Minister Modi wants him to come to India, every country is wanting to sign a deal with Tesla, with SpaceX, with any company that Elon's running. Now he's got Neuralink, which is, changing the way that humans are going to communicate with computers, and, just treating many, many diseases. How can anybody think he's not a great CEO, but then if not even the best CEO ever in history? I mean, if you go down the list of his companies that he's done, these are the largest companies. I don't know of anybody else who's ever run 5 companies that are over $1 billion each. Yeah.
So I would say Hans had a great point earlier. You said that it doesn't matter what he does, the haters are going to hate. And that's the absolute truth. You can point to anything and find an imperfection. You could look back at Beethoven's Fifth and say, here's what I would have done differently. Would that have made it better? Well, maybe for a particular time period, but maybe not. Guessing in the past is hard to do. It's easy to look at one or two aspects and say, here's what I would have done differently. Does differently automatically mean better? In a handful of cases, yes, because no one is perfect. And if we're looking at the rankings, there will be no 100% score on CEO, but this is a very high one. The only other CEOs that come to mind in history really is Larry and Sergey from Google. They changed the world. They made wealth. They attracted top talent. They were global in every country they were permitted to operate in. But, then they left, and now the company is pretty big and boring.
Yeah, and
Yes,
I think the metrics that you mentioned, as far as the number of companies that he's been a part of that have gone on, whether it's PayPal, like to sell Zip to begin with, like that's an accomplishment. Many people have made similar accomplishments, but then to go on from there and to be a co-founder of PayPal that became a massive company, and he was the CEO of that company for a period of time as well. Well, that's, okay, now you're getting into a much smaller category of people who've ever been able to accomplish that. But then to come off the back of that and then co-found, or not co-found, but to found SpaceX and to be one of the earliest investors of Tesla, and essentially then have to take over, like kick out the original founders and take over the founding role to remake the entire company because it was completely non-workable the way that it was in those two companies. Like, now you're talking about, okay, nobody in history has been that pivotal to that many companies of that size. And now we've got X on top of that. We've got, the Boring Company, we've got Neuralink, and these are companies that, potentially will continue to have a much brighter future. And, I don't like the last time we had a CEO. So I would say, go back further to some of the other big ones. You have to start looking at the
Before you
railroad
do that,
magnates.
Hans, you're completely missing the biggest, most impactful company that Elon founded that matters most. You haven't even said it yet. You both don't know? Come on, dudes. Love
Well,
it.
if it's
I love
if
this
it's
game.
XAI, then it's too soon to say.
It's OpenAI. He
Oh, yeah,
founded OpenAI. He knew about AI
Well,
5-10 years
yes.
ago. He met with Obama. He was talking about the AI. No, everybody said, "Oh, that's a future." He was the one that was with NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, who donated the first H100 for them to use. And then
But he
he
wasn't the
wanted to
CEO.
he wanted to be the CEO, and that's why this happened. But he founded the company. He founded the organization.
Yeah.
He wanted it to be OpenAI. He wanted to be a nonprofit, and now OpenAI was
I
instrumental.
think they're going to be an
in-
interesting side note in history because they have become closed AI, and they are going
Yeah.
to follow closed AI path into oblivion and irrelevancy.
But they kickstarted AI, and they kickstarted AI becoming a big deal. And of course, many of us understand that AI is going to be a massive impact and influence to society and humanity. And so here it might actually be the most. That's what I'm saying. Right? It's like it's going to be AI, it's going to be AGI, and it's going to be embodied AI. And I still believe it's embodied AI, which is robots. It's going to be more impactful to society than AI itself. In order to get to AGI, you need embodied AI. So, and my point is there anything bigger than that?
It's
energy.
crazy. I did see a couple people
Transport-
who were saying, if you were going to have to get rid of an entire division, why couldn't they have gotten rid of robotics? And I thought,
You're kidding me.
What?
What?
What are you talking about? Why would you say? You know what? I think you should invest in an index fund and let just the market deal with you, because I don't know how you know how to use a computer sufficiently to type a message if that's your takeaway. And I could see maybe Wall Street isn't counting future revenue from the bots, but I don't care what the market thinks over 3 months or 6 months or even 2 years. My horizon is 5-10 years. Even 5 is too short. I'm looking at 10 years plus. And for me, being able to see beyond the horizon is very difficult, but sometimes you've got a brochure. And seeing what they're doing with Optimus, seeing years ago what they're doing with autonomy, we have the brochure. All we have to do is buy the ticket.
So what do you guys think? Is he the best CEO ever in history? I put my hand up and say yes.
I don't know enough CEOs to say. He's certainly the best one I've seen. And as a teenager, I read Lee Iacocca's book. So, I mean, hey, I know a few things.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go back to Rockefellers or somebody of that era to get into another time when we had, I think part of it is that right now we're at a point in history that a lot of change is happening, and that impact can be had now that really is going to last a long time. And so I think that's part of it, that Elon was born at the right time to be able to be this effective. But, I can't think of anyone else who I think is going to have a larger, because he's got all of those impacts. And then if we do become a spacefaring civilization, that's going to be in a large part, like, to be part of transitioning the world to a sustainable energy future and making us a multiplanetary spacefaring species. Like, those are two of the biggest things that have ever happened in all of history and humanity. And then, oh yeah, AI, like, on top of that, no one has been a part of that many, like, world altering transformations, especially in the space of
So, yeah.
basically roughly the same time.
One way that he can become the worst CEO in history is if AI goes haywire, if robots go haywire, if they go spacefaring and they bring back a disease, kills off humanity. They go spacefaring and they use a Starlink, and then all of a sudden we communicate with aliens and the aliens come and kill us all. If Starlink, I don't know, goes haywire, there's a laser, or whatever, creates a world war. These things can happen, and then all of a sudden, what he built is actually negative, and he knows this, right? He's very aware of the, you know what I mean. What's that? There's that term where things are just the opposite of what you intended it to be, and it can go completely opposite. And that's why he wants 25% voting control, so that it can prevent the things that he's helping build, make sure that it's good for humanity, not bad. So this could still turn around, and he may not become the best CEO in history.
I thought you were going to say he'd become the worst CEO if he started paying dividends. There are people I've seen analysts who really want that, but these hedge fund managers live day to day, quarter to quarter, and
Right.
that's
And for
great
them,
if that's your
he's
job.
a terrible CEO. Yeah.
Terrible CEO. You look at the CEO of that they brought in to run Hertz, and his job was to bring the company back from bankruptcy. So he did a bunch of very exciting things that moved the stock tremendously over the short term with no regard to what was coming down the pike. And it was all predictable. You knew that buying cars at the very apex of new car pricing was not going to allow them to be able to sell them at a reasonable price later. But he didn't care. I don't care. That's the next guy's problem. And when you've got somebody that actually cares about the company, that actually wants the company to succeed over the long, and remember, on the current stock award, Elon can't sell for 5 years. The people saying, "Oh, it's a pump and dump," and guys, you can't have a pump and dump if you don't sell the shares. That's not how it works. So it'll be very interesting and borderline ridiculous to see the spin on it. Would I say he's the best CEO? Probably. I mean, I don't know enough CEOs to say definitively, but the results speak for themselves, and growing at a time when growth is difficult, being profitable at a time when all your competitors are showing negative numbers is truly remarkable.
So what about today? Is he making the wrong moves? Are you guys very concerned about the 10% layoffs, the getting rid? Some people are going, oh, he's just impetuous. It's his mood again. We have read from Walter Isaacson's book that he does go through demon mode, and he's actually looking for chaos. He needs chaos, and it's just his personality. It's a condition that he has. He's always looking for that. It can turn out to be good, but it's also, obviously a negative thing. And some people think, oh, he just went through demon mode and he just impetuously said, you're fired. All of you, done. Is that going to be a damaging thing for the company?
I would say he's definitely acting on emotions over some of these things, but it happens. And again, it's a package deal. I would prefer if all of the decisions were calm and rational and reasonable, but that's not who he is. And if he was someone to take that approach, maybe the cuts wouldn't have happened at all, and we would just be starting down the road of prolonged bloat. If you need to cut 3 to 5% every year, there were no cuts last year. In 23, there were no cuts, no big cuts anyway. So you've already got an extra year of bloat there, and that will compound. And pretty soon you've got a culture of people that's made up of people who don't fit the mission. And again, 90% of them, even today, appear to fit the mission. Would I like him to be a little less emotional? Sure. But what I really want is just better communication. And unfortunately, the people who are good at communicating, like Rohan and like Drew, are gone. And I think that's unfortunate. But I don't know which direction would have been better, and I can't pretend that I know better, because even if I was a rival CEO who was just as good, which I'm not, I can't see behind their curtain. So I would just be Monday morning quarterbacking.
But what about the people who are saying that Elon, obviously he's on Twitter, he's on X, he says things he shouldn't be saying. He's very controversial what he says. That's not a good CEO. If you're doing things like that, it's damaging to the company. Many people will not, by principle, buy Tesla cars because they can't. It's past their moral compass. What about the people who say that he is somebody who's unfocused? He's distracted. One day it's Tesla, next day it's SpaceX, next day it's X, next day it's his girlfriend, and he's flying around the world. He should be focused on Tesla all the time. What are your comments on those?
I love people like that, because what they don't understand about Tesla is my opportunity to make a lot of money over time.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I can only focus on one thing so much. And if I spend too many hours focusing on one thing without pivoting and doing something else, it's not going to be productive.
But Elon has proven, hasn't he not? If you just look in the last 5 years, last 10 years, SpaceX is succeeding like crazy. X is succeeding like crazy now. He's turned it around from almost death. Tesla is succeeding pretty good. You could say, Tesla should be even better, but they're all. Everything he's
I'm not
touching
saying that.
Neuralink.
What I'm saying is you can only dedicate so many hours of mental space to one thing, and he does. And then you need a hobby. And maybe his hobby is boring, or maybe his hobby is SpaceX.
Yeah. X.
Well, no, I mean, it's all these other things. So he'll focus on this until his brain is ready to put it in on the back burner and just chew on it. And then he'll focus on the other things. And he's able to get those things done by using that idle brain time to work on other big projects in ways that be confident I would be able to do. But that's just how he is.
When you hear the comment, "Don't bet against Elon," what comes to your minds? Like, I mean, this is a guy.
I thought it was "Don't bed against Elon" because he's got so many kids. I misunderstood.
No, you're misunderstanding too.
I think about a lot of short seller losses. I think we're potentially in the middle of a little bit of a short squeeze right now. Whenever the next
but he also says, "Don't worry about
move,
stock. Stock falls." He says one time the stock.
I mean,
is
it does
already
in
too
the
high,
short
my
term.
opinion.
And people have, sometimes people do make a little bit of money for a while shorting the stock. Like, that's the nature of the company over time has been, it goes up in a really sharp upward move, and then it comes down and it consolidates for a number of years, and then it goes up real sharp again. And so, if you continue to bet against Elon for the long term, it's only a matter of time before you're going to get short squeezed. And so if you want to do that, you better be smart about when to and when not to. And I don't want to try and figure out how to do that, because I, there are very, very wealthy and successful and famous people who have tried to make a living doing that, and they are no longer successful or wealthy.
Or solvent.
Or solvent,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. So, Herbert, you'd earlier said there are people whose moral compass will not permit them to buy the car because of Elon. And to that, I would say, but you're okay with buying a gas car that's causing harms that are known from companies and countries that are openly hostile to you and everything you stand for, just because the CEO of Stellantis isn't posting on X doesn't mean we're talking about saints here. Just, are you really willing to shoot yourself in the foot over over what you perceive to be a moral shortcoming. I think the stock might perform better if he were to not post on X. Am I telling him not to? Of course not. That's his right. And but that would affect the stock over the short term. Over the long term, the only thing that matters is execution. And I'm not convinced that the number of people who simply will not, if you really want to buy a Tesla and you won't because of Elon, you're going to go out and buy another EV. And that is still good for the overall mission of transitioning to a sustainable, renewable energy economy. And I just don't see it as that big of a loss.
It'd be very ironic if he saved humanity because of climate change, or because of, like you said, the spacefaring, having a plan B, or because of, needing AI and the declining world population, and then having robots to support the economy. He saves humanity, and yet he becomes the most hated man, which is like feels like some there's a huge group of people that feel that way, and it's just, like, are you?
Yeah, I just, I am in it, man. We're here. The fact that we know the executives at this company, if tomorrow Ford told you they're laying off the same roles at their company, would you have ever heard of those people?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. Those are not roles that I know. It's crazy. I meet people who are, Mustang aficionado, they've got their Mustang club, or how many people even know who designed the car that they love so much? Show of hands, who's met Franz?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, not only do we know him on a, yeah. So it is crazy. It's crazy that.
So
this is.
are we? Okay, we're dangerously looking like we're a group of groupies who are
We're
so
stooges.
fawning over, or stooges. But that's where I step back and going, are we stooges? Because I was a big fan of Apple and Steve Musk, Steve Jobs. But I never was one of those people that would, I never did videos for them. I never, talked to people every single day about them. I never waited in line for anybody like that. But I was, very, very care about them. Am I wrong to say that Elon Musk, being here, living in the same time as him, witnessing this person, even if I hate him, but witnessing this person in this time frame, because he will end up becoming, written up in history. He will have an impact. Am I too early to say that? Or am I not? Is he not one of those people that comes once in a generation?
Is it even once in a generation? Who was the last one? I'm drawing a blank. I mean, there were people
Thomas
who got
Edison,
very rich.
Babe.
That's not a generation. That's a century.
That's a couple of centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, Einstein, dude, he was just a generation ago. I mean, people like Einstein who changed the world because of discoveries or just the way their mind works. And they're, am I being a groupie by saying this? Because I even, as much as I want to be objective about it and not be subjective, because like I say, it's not like I don't love this person, but I just look at what he's accomplished, what he's doing for the world. And to me, it seems like he's accomplishing and doing amazing things for the world.
If we
the
do a
most important
survey,
things for the world. Yeah.
if we were to do a survey and ask what is the impact of pizza on culture, we would come out looking like pizza fanboys because everyone loves pizza, and that's what the data shows. So I think sometimes, I get people on X who will say, you're just a fanboy and you can't be objective. And I say, have you not watched my videos? I am critical when it makes sense. I am willing to point out the negative. When I have a problem, I will say it. No one tells me what to say. And that's something you don't get from the people who respond to Elon negatively in an emotional way. They are all in on the idea that everything he does must be bad. And when I look to someone to determine whether or not they're credible, I ask, oh, you're a fan of this company, Lucid or Lee or Neo. What have you posted that's negative about them? And if the answer is nothing, then I can't listen to anything you say because I don't know which parts are real and what you're leaving out. And so I would argue that at least for the three of us, we are capable of being objective. And in doing so, that is what's led us to the conclusion that things are in an exceptionally good state.
One of the main arguments of why people think he's a terrible CEO is his communication. And what he communicates to not only shareholders, but of course to his employees and the way he communicates. And I can see the reason why they say that. And that could actually be a really true statement of why, someone may not be seen as a good CEO if they can't communicate. I actually see it the opposite though. Again, I'm trying to be sure if I'm being objective of this or not. You notice that he's very good communicating vision. He's so good at it that he gets all of his employees to really buy into it and really, really go extra hard and, sacrifice their lives for the company. And he repeats over and over and over again. But isn't that what a good communicator does? Because it takes people, you've seen the famous, you need 9 commercials before somebody actually registers the commercial and understands what they're trying to say. 9 times of touch. And so he just repeats it over and over again. And isn't that a good communicator? Somebody who has a clear understanding, says something, and it doesn't change over time because these are first principles. These are the main vision that's going to be true for years on end. It's a guiding post. And yet people say he's a terrible communicator, right? He stutters. He doesn't, his mind just works differently. What's your thoughts about his communication style?
I would just say that anyone who criticizes a public speaker, whether it's a politician, a business leader, public speaking is difficult. Doing what we're doing right now may look easy because you only watch the people who make it look easy. It's not a natural skill. It's something you have to develop over time and work on and refine. So the fact that he only gives a few speeches a year and is as eloquent as he is fine by me. It's also not a beauty pageant. People, oh, well, he got fat. Okay, but it's not a beauty pageant here, guys. It's a business. That's what we're looking for. Look through the executives of any company. I don't need pretty people. I need smart people. And that's, So I think the communication, again, I think it's a real weak point at the corporate level. I think on the corporate side, they need better communication, especially if you don't want investors freaking out all the time over leaks or rumors or truths. But I don't think that his personal communication skills are any kind of deal breaker for me.
I don't know how to. I guess one thing that I would say on this is, he communicates vision well enough to make up for a lot of the other things. And he definitely communicates like an engineer. And most of the things that he does, engineers are the most important people that he needs to communicate to because he's trying to get people who can make his visions come to reality into his companies. So I would say he's an excellent communicator to engineers, for engineers. Beyond that, there may be a lot left to be desired, but I don't know that that really matters because at the end of the day, results speak for themselves. And he has probably created more market value than anyone else in history, and we're still just getting started.
Well, that could be the other criteria. Some people will say the best CEO in the world is the one that has created the largest company in the world, the biggest market cap increase possible. That's one way to judge this. Has Elon done that already?
I mean, if you account for all of the companies that he has been a CEO of, then I think that he's right up there. So, I mean, probably Jensen is going to be, and Jensen is a phenomenal CEO. He just doesn't quite have the breadth of different things that he's done. But he's going to go down for a little while as potentially being one of the people who created the most market capitalization value. But yeah, like there's still a lot left to go in humanoid robotics and robotaxis and SpaceX and XAI. So, I think between all of the different things that Elon Musk is the actual CEO of, it's, you know, if we go out 20 years from now, it'll definitely be Elon.
Yeah, that's what's looking like. If we go to another planet, that's that's just another mind blowing thing that people can't understand.
I
Spacefaring
can't.
species.
I have a thing that day, so you guys can go to another planet. But
Well, we're gonna go. You got to think that day.
yeah, I
Okay.
got a thing.
Wonderful. Thank you both very much. We just talked about, is Elon Musk the best or the worst CEO in history? We didn't spend a lot of time on the worst CEO. I think we're biased as a group. But you tell us, folks out there, send a comment, and appreciate everybody. We'll do this again next week. Bye, all.